Hi, this is Dr. Ari Tuckman, and you are listening to ADHD Rewired with my friend Eric Tivers. Eric, keep up the good work.
ADHD Rewired, episode number 16. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and you want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. But before we do, let me please remind you about this. One of the best things that I do to manage my ADHD is I attend conferences. I go and I learn new strategies that help me and my clients, but I keep going back for the community. Please join me in Orlando, July 24th through the 27th for the ADA conference, the only ADHD conference focused on adults with ADHD. Register at ada.adhdrewired.com. That's ADDA.adhdrewired.com. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I am your host, Eric Tivers. Thanks for joining us. If you have not listened to episode 15, you may want to do so first. But I have put together a brief audio montage of episode 15. I read an interview or an email from James Hickman, who is one of our listeners. And then after I put together an audio kind of digest of his email, I called him. And this conversation is what today's episode is all about. But before we get into today's episode, there's a few things I want to remind you about and tell you about. One, if you are thinking about going to the ADA conference, I would really encourage you to register now. Registration online closes June 30th. You can still register at the door at the conference, but it's going to be more expensive. So I would encourage you to do so now. And remember, you can just go through my website or use my affiliate link. Also, save the date for the CHAD conference, which is going to be in my neck of the woods up here in the Chicago area, November 13th through the 15th. So I hope that you will save the date for at least one of those conferences. And I will be presenting at both the ADA and CHAD conferences. And I just want to thank everyone who has left reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. I am just a couple under 100 reviews on iTunes. So if you haven't done so already, please go there now. And don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Tune in next week as I talk to psychologist and ADHD specialist, my friend, Ari Tuckman, host of the podcast and author of the book by the same name, More Attention, Less Deficit. I know last week I didn't do this, so I think we'll start off this week with the Tech Tip of the Week. This week's Tech Tip of the Week comes from our featured guest, James. He recommends Google Now. Google Now is the digital assistant similar to Siri or Contura, which I'm not really familiar with, but he loves it because of how it aggregates data. James says that Google Now is so valuable for the ADHD brain because it has a hard time connecting when you think about doing something with the time you actually need to do it. Now, Google Now makes it easier than other assistants because it's always listening. All you have to do is unlock the phone and say, "Okay, Google." Some phones, like the Moto X, you don't even have to unlock the phone to activate it. Here are a few cool tips for using it. Time-based reminders. So this first tip is not a data aggregation tip, but It is the go-to way I use Google Now. I often forget to put my laundry in the dryer. I use a communal washer and dryer, so if I forget it, it will be a hassle for someone else. So after I put my laundry in the washer, I ask Google Now to remind me to check it in 40 minutes. You can also set up recurring reminders like remind me to take my meds every morning, location-based reminders. And guys, this is why I like features like Google Now. So location-based reminders says I am good at remembering what I need to pick up at the store after I've already left the store. Yes, I can relate to that. You can ask Google Now for the location-based reminder like, next time I'm at Walmart, remind me to pick up some vitamin D. Or when I'm at work, remind me to send my email, send an email to my boss. There's also traffic-based reminders. Google Now will learn about you over time. It will notice when you leave to work and how you commute. So it will take location into consideration and give you a reminder when the best time it is for you to leave. And it will also take into consideration the weather. That's cool. It can suggest the best time to catch a flight and can keep tabs on when you should leave based on your calendar events. He also says that there's a new feature where you can find inferred events based on things that are in your email. He also talks about TV reminders. So if you can ask Google Now to say remind you the next time a certain episode is on. That's really cool. And one more really cool and completely pointless function of Google Now is ask Google Now to do a barrel roll. That's all I got for you. That is this week's Tech Tip of the Week. Now, let's get into today's episode. We're going to start with a quick montage and the interview. Enjoy. On the surface, seems successful. However, the other side of my life is a complete mess. One of my biggest problems was alcohol. I felt the worst emotional pain that I can ever remember feeling, and I decided to sleep in my car and die of exposure. I called the local rehab and was ready to go. My insurance didn't cover it. I quit drinking, found a sponsor, and started doing AA. Then I found out about adult ADHD because of your show. It was one of those once-in-a-lifetime moments. Like reading a great book or finding the right religion. Reading the symptoms took all the weight off my shoulders. I felt a profound sense of euphoria. I asked her about adult ADHD. She prescribed me Dexedrine. And from then on, my life has been completely different. I have been reading all I can about the subject. James, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I am here with James Hickman, and you share some pretty personal stuff with us on your journey and discovery of having ADHD, and went through some pretty dark periods. Can you share with us just a little bit about how you're doing now?
I realize there will definitely be a point in my life where that euphoria is totally gone. But as far as what I'm working on, I'm more focused on, sobriety. Number one, I got an awesome sponsor.
Also, I did do a little bit of, I guess, editing, you can call it. Not creative editing, but I guess I'll call it censoring. I cut out the swears that James used in our interview. And here's why. I'm a parent, and I've got a lot of emails from parents who have told me that they have enjoyed listening to this show with their kids. So with that in mind, I wanted to make it so this can be a family show, even though this really is a show for adults. We also know that the apple never falls far from the tree. So as adults, when we have kids, there's a really good chance that our kids are also going to have ADHD.
I'm more focused on, sobriety. Number one, I got an awesome sponsor. I'm not a whole 100% into like the AA kind of their system or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I definitely feel the value of being accountable to one person. You know what I mean? For me, the alcoholism, the root is ADHD. And I think the problem is more, about my executive function and stuff like that. And I think one thing that I try to keep mindful of is I'm definitely have a problem with impulsive speech and not realizing the things that I could say can offend people. You know what I mean? And like, that's the one thing that I'm trying to work on, because I don't have problems making friends or keeping friends, but I do have problems like maintaining like frenemies or, just associates. Because I don't really suffer fools very well. So if people say something stupid, I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? And so like, I think I
was going to ask you, so what are some of the examples of the impulsivity that you're?
Yeah. So that's probably one of my main challenges that I'm kind of focused on. But I mean, being in that AA kind of group, like, so I'm always kind of mindful of not offending people. And kind of the point is getting a better social group. Unfortunately, like a lot of the AA groups that I've gone, there's kind of the cultural divide between the people that are in the group is so wide that it's kind of hard for me to see myself like making any kind of meaningful relationships. But there is one AA group here in town that's full of kind of like more lefty, kind of liberal, kind of professional types. Mm-hmm. And it happens in the morning, like when I'm still at work. But when I transition to my new job, it's actually in the same building as my job. Oh, nice. So I'll be able to like hit it up in the morning and then go to work and, hit the gym afterwards or whatever. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But I mean, so my sponsor, he has like nearly 2 decades of sobriety, and he has a strong background in kind of music. I think he was a drummer for a band, and a lot of his experiences with kind of like the party scene are similar to mine. And so he has a lot of great advice in terms of dealing with kind of your friends that drink and stuff, which I mean, the majority of my friends kind of drink, and especially like kind of like what I was talking about in my letter is the Noise and Color, the magazine that I work for, is kind of like a nonstop party. And I think a lot of those people aren't alcoholics, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But they definitely enable someone like me, because I'll go out and I'll do something stupid, or I'll say something to a person, and later on, like when I hear about what I said, and I go up to them and I apologize, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay, man. You were just drunk." You know what I mean? So it's just this crazy enabling that happens. And I probably could have kept doing that for the rest of my life and probably burnt a lot of bridges or whatever. So I'm just mindful of that.
Well, I have 2 questions. Hopefully by the time I finish the first one, I'll remember the second one. You said that your sponsor has given you a lot of really good advice. Is there one piece of advice, or maybe kind of a synthesized advice that he's given you that you really kind of hold close to you, that kind of helps you sustain your focus on kind of keeping your path where it's at?
Yeah, sure. I think the one thing that comes to mind is he basically kind of said that, while you can't go, or you don't feel comfortable going to bars now or hanging out with friends that are drinking, and it's a good idea to avoid that. He says it's not always going to be that way. Mm-hmm. That I'll be in the future be able to, hang out, go to bars and interact socially, and not feel, because like right now, like I'm pretty driven. Sorry, I keep swearing. But so I'm pretty driven as a
I may edit that, by the way.
Yeah, you probably should. And especially because with drinking, like it literally is kind of like a life or death kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm not afraid of drinking, and I don't think I'm going to make that mistake. But when I'm in those kind of social situations, it's hard for me to have fun. It's hard for me to be relaxed, and especially if I'm around cool people and stuff like that, it's hard for me just to be cool. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely kind of avoiding that situation as much as I can.
So my other question was then, so much of ADHD management is really environmental modification, meaning setting up your physical environment around you to be conducive and to support, what you need. Like for me, like I could not work in a cubicle environment because I can't filter auditory distractions. So being that you said your workplace is kind of like a party, how are you coping with that?
I just kind of, I avoid it. I avoid those kind of situations because I think you're right. I think environment definitely has a lot to do with it. And if I can make the choice to avoid those kind of situations, I'm definitely going to do that. Because right now I just don't have any of those kind of structures in my personal personality or whatever that I could depend on right now. Mm-hmm. So I just, at this point, I kind of avoid those situations. And it's weird because corporate culture of noise and color is ADHD. You know what I mean? Like we would put off laying out the magazine until the last day. And the executive editor is a self-described ADHD, and he's I try, I kind of, make a couple suggestions here or there, maybe you should try out medication. But anyway, so we
I do want to ask you about medication in a moment.
Sure. So we tend to wait to the last minute to lay out the magazine, and I believe that kind of negatively affects the quality and for a long time I was kind of a managing editor of Noise and Color, and I before I even got the diagnosis of ADHD, I realized that I am not that. You know what I mean? I guess that's a pretty a thing that happens a lot with ADHD people. They're really good at something, and then they get put into a management position, and then they just flounder. So a lot of that is honestly my fault for setting up kind of that ADHD culture in the magazine. But now that I've realized that, step back, focusing on what I'm doing, what I do good. We have another person, Doug Oltrogi, who is just an amazing manager. He's kind of like that archetypical kind of grumpy editor, and stuff.
Keeps everybody grounded.
He keeps everybody grounded and keeps everybody accountable. And so he's been in that position and taken over a lot of my responsibilities in that regard. And so he's been in that position of executive editor for about 6 months, maybe longer. About 2 or 3 months ago, it was when I was just I can't do this. I'm not successful with this. And so he's been slowly taking over those responsibilities. He's totally there right now. And he's definitely moving things in the direction of less ADHD. And so we're kind of excited about that.
And I think that's awesome. I think that having, one, understanding your strengths and challenges. And, part of that environmental modification is having those people around you to support you, to help you kind of focus on your strengths and not really push you to do those things that are so challenging for you. I mean, for myself in my practice, the financial management of bill collection and billing, to me it's mind numbing. So I pay someone to do my billing for me. And even the little bit that I have to do, send my biller my schedule, to me, that's the most painful task.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes me all of 5 minutes. And it's, but when I started my practice, for the first 6 months, I took insurance. And I was telling you, I was having panic attacks trying to make sense of this insurance world, which makes absolutely no sense. And so when you have ADHD and you're trying to, you have to be a master of follow-up if you're going to take insurance and get paid for it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I'm kind of part of that world a little bit with my medical records job. And it's, I agree. It's a big mess.
It's awful. It's awful. So, I wish for my clients in some ways that I was able to take it. And so I would be accessible to more people. But you know what? I have to know for myself and know that if I want to be a good clinician, and I have to be able to focus in my green zone. And that's, doing therapy, doing coaching, doing what I do well, not being stressed out and overwhelmed by, the management piece of billing. Some people can do it, and great, good for them. I am not one of those therapists.
Yeah.
So, And I tell people that right up front so they know exactly what to expect working with me. So I think being really open and honest, as a therapist and coach that specializes in ADHD, I kind of have that advantage of doing that. It's not like I'm an accountant and say I'm really good at doing this, but I have ADHD, so I'm not so great at that. In the context, it wouldn't really fit.
Totally. It's funny you mentioned that too, because since I got my diagnosis of ADHD, I also have the comorbidity of dyslexia. And so I've been kind of like really looking at the life and the kind of choices I made in terms of my career. And while I'm super satisfied that I've reached a level of success in writing and in editing, and I think it's satisfying that I've overcome both, at least in some sense, ADHD and dyslexia. I realized that there's a limit to how successful I could be in that world. Because I think if I ever want to do things that are bigger than just Billings, Montana, I think people are expecting you to be the whole package, and I still make just stupid kind of mistakes in terms of writing. So I have to be real with myself, and so I'm kind of like in a point in my life where I'm pivoting from writing into doing like recorded kind of stuff with podcasting. So it is. I'm very grateful because a lot of the skills that I have in terms of interviewing, in terms of editing, in terms of creating a story and stuff like that, I could easily make that pivot into audio and still have that skill set to fall back on and stuff.
Now, am I making this up, or did you say that you were wanting to get into doing podcasting yourself?
Yeah, so like I said in my message, I've been into podcasting since 2008, and I've had two podcasts that I was a part of. One was in college. It was called the College Gamer Cast. And that, unfortunately, I kind of ran that podcast, and we, I think, only actually put out one episode, but we recorded like probably 12.
That sounds like my music career. I've probably written, I don't know, 30, 40 plus songs. I have like half an album, sort of.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. And because I did it in the university system, the university that I was going to has an amazing kind of regional affiliate for National Public Radio. And it's actually part of the school, and it's actually the number 2 rated station in this market. And so there's a young guy that went to school at MSUB, the school that I went to, and a super young guy. He's like probably 35 or 36, and he just got the position of the general station manager or whatever that position's called. And so I was able to really kind of learn a lot from him in terms of podcast creation and stuff. So anyway, so I did that. Later on, I did another podcast called Collective Loot, which it was also a video game podcast, and we put out 6 or 7 episodes. And so I do have a strong background in listening to podcasts and a little bit of a background in creating podcasts. So, and I've always wanted to like kind of put more energy into that. And so I decided to make a podcast network on a small scale. It's called Brushfire Media. And so it's going to focus on kind of local stuff. And I'm creating 2 podcasts for the magazine that I work for, and I'm going to use that to kind of leverage our readership for the podcast network. And I have some other kind of IP in this local community that I'm going to leverage and stuff. So hopefully, at least locally, I'll be able to create a fan base that'll be sustainable and stuff like that. So, and I'm thinking about doing an ADHD kind of podcast, because I've noticed like that there's a lot of kind of clinical advice. Stuff, which I think your podcast specifically is probably the best example of that. But there's not much, so I kind of want to maybe record my journey and make it less about strategies and stuff, and more about the experience. And so like I kind of thinking like more like This American Life, where I'll just tell stories and have. I
love This American Life.
Oh, so do I.
That's what I aspire to do.
Me too. And I look at it almost like
Ira Glass is my hero.
Oh man, he's so good. And so it'll be more like that. And I think it'll be something that I think ADHD people could point to as like, hey, this is what ADHD is like. Because obviously there's not a lot of awareness about adult ADHD.
You're absolutely right. There's so much misunderstanding. I often say that for how much research is actually known about it, that we're constantly losing the battle for actually having accurate information out there.
I agree. I've noticed the same thing, especially in the last 20 years, specifically like in neurobiology. There's been these huge strides. And sure, there was a time when like we didn't really know what ADHD was and like how the medications work, but we now know like why things work, but that hasn't permeated to the culture, and it hasn't permeated to like clinicians who are not specialized in ADHD.
Well, right. And that's a challenge too, is, a lot of medical professionals don't get it. And there's still the whole notion of they don't believe in it, like it's Santa Claus.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that too, because I was the same way. I thought, ADHD is bullshit. You know what I mean? It's just the pharma companies, blah blah blah. And so I definitely understand that, and I think that we see similarities to that in like the vaccination thing with kids. I think anytime you mix like drugs and kids, people tend to react emotionally. And so, and plus it sucks that the amphetamine or the stimulants kind of have a bad rep, and they get compared to like meth and stuff. When actually,
it's so different.
It's like literally different. They're two different kind of molecules.
James, so you've been on meds now for a little over a month.
Almost 2 months now. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I started back on Dexedrine only because that's what I used as a kid. It's not a very popular drug for the treatment of ADHD, not because it's, bad or anything. It's just kind of old. Mm-hmm. And so it's not, it doesn't get prescribed much or even talked about much. Mm-hmm. And so I was using it and had pretty great results. But I was still kind of struggling a little bit at work, only because we've switched to kind of a new system. And as we all know, ADHD folk have a hard time transitioning. And so like, I'm really great at my job, but I kind of ran into a wall in terms of the transition and knowing like when I have to do things and how I have to do things. And so I kind of ran up against that a wall a little bit. And I was looking at people's experiences with Dexedrine and Adderall. And of course, it's all kind of anecdotal, but the kind of consensus that I saw is that Adderall is a little bit stronger. Because it's more than just the dextroamphetamine. It also uses the left-handed side of that molecule. I honestly don't know what that means, but so it kind of has a couple more side effects. But people kind of experience like a robotic kind of feeling to it, where there's like kind of really focused and stuff like that. And a lot of people think that that's a bad experience, and I totally understand that. But I don't really care. If I act like a robot, as long as I'm getting my work done, I don't really care. You know what I mean? So I switched to Adderall just recently, and
the short acting or the
this is the extended release. Okay. Yeah, I could tell that we're gonna have to figure out something, because I get up and I get up around 4, but I don't usually go to work till about 7 or 8, and so halfway through my workday,
it's wearing off.
It wears off and stuff. So I'm probably going to have to do like bring a short acting Adderall to work or something like that.
That's very common.
I've kind of heard that. And I'm not at the right levels medication wise. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a bigger dude, and I probably metabolize it a little less efficiently or whatever. I honestly don't know how that stuff works.
Well, with the amphetamines though, now I've heard two different things that were kind of conflicting. My understanding is that the amphetamines are not actually weight specific. But I recently, we invited some researchers to a CHAD meeting, and they were saying that it is, and I don't think that was accurate.
Yeah, I've heard kind of mixed things too. Like I heard this one doctor say that actually the body doesn't really build up a tolerance for it, and that there's some enzymes in the body that can create some sort of tolerance. I didn't really understand what he was saying. He also went on to say that there's never been a recorded example of people getting addicted to Adderall or the stimulant. And so I was like, I don't know. That doesn't seem true to me, but I honestly don't know. But at least from my experience, I know I'm not at the level that I need to be, because it seems like the first week I'm definitely where I should be, that kind of wears off. So I'm kind of, and plus, being ADHD, I'm a little impatient. So I'm like, God, I want this to go now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
do you have a follow-up then with your doctor?
I do. Yeah. And my follow-up is actually the 23rd, and I think I'm going to run out of Adderall the 20th. So I think I have to probably call her and maybe get another.
Now that you've put it out there that that you have to do that, that's what you're going to do after you hang up on this call, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. So
I mean, I sometimes will realize, oh my God, I have 3 days of medication left. Oh my gosh, how did I let that happen? I mean, it used, when I was in college, I got the 3-month mail order, and it was like I had to think about my refills 4 times a year, and it was so ADHD friendly. And now, because of there's so much bad press about the stimulant medications that, for the very reason that we need the medication, we have to jump through all these hurdles to get it. And it just seems very unfair. To me, I look at it through the analogy of, it's like telling the person who is in a wheelchair to get physical therapy, they need to go up those steps.
Yeah, I know. And it affects because I'm always worried that my doctor thinks what my doctor thinks, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I kind of need more. And I'm like, I hope she doesn't think like I'm addicted or like an addict or selling it or something like that. So I mean, that stigma kind of affects me in that sort of regard. And plus, my fucking idiot friends are always like, oh, you go to Adderall? Can I buy some? And I'm like, no, you asshole. Like this, I need this to like function as a person. So.
Yeah, I often recommend to my clients is to not, it's okay to share that you have ADHD with your friends, but don't tell them that you have the stimulant medication.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I think I'm gonna start doing that. I also saw like the Vyvanse. Mm-hmm. Which just is a super cool, like fascinating drug where I think they combine it with some molecule that gets broken down in the gut or whatever. And so it's less.
Yeah, it's called prodrug.
Yeah, they actually made a new category just for this drug called prodrug. And so I guess it's less easy to abuse.
Right.
And so I was thinking maybe I should just do that and tell my friends that like, no, you can't. Go ahead and try it. But I think your advice is probably way better than doing that.
I mean, and I tell people too, if they're living with other people, lock their meds up.
That's a great idea.
Don't even make it an opportunity for someone to take it, because it's
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because I keep my meds in my medicine cabinet, so maybe that's not a good idea. No, I think that's
what you should do? You should put some laxatives in your bottle of Adderall.
Surprise!
Did I say that out loud? Whoops.
You heard it here first.
With Vyvanse though, it's actually here's my understanding of it. Mm-hmm. It is, as far as the isotopic molecules, it's a mirror of Adderall.
Okay.
So, what does that actually mean? I actually have no idea. It's just really interesting to know that it's a reversed spin of how the molecules are put together.
Yeah.
Now, about a year and a half ago, there was a shortage of Adderall, and I couldn't get my Adderall, and it was so I ended up going on Vyvanse, and it was like a 2-month train wreck.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The first week of it was actually really good. And then it was like downhill from there. And I've actually heard a lot of people report that very same experience.
Interesting. Okay.
So I got myself back on Adderall, and And now I'm doing what I do. I'm doing better.
I've kind of noticed that too, because from what I've heard, that the ADHD has the most kind of pharmaceuticals available, and that could be a bad thing because like the ADHD brain's like, oh, maybe I should try this. Oh, maybe I should try that. No, maybe I should just stick with what works. One thing I would.
From a prescribing standpoint, what is recommended is it doesn't really matter what class of stimulant you start with, but typically start with the stimulant, go to the highest dose that you can tolerate until there are unwanted side effects, and then switch the type of stimulant. So if you're taking Adderall and it's not working, don't go to Vyvanse because it's actually like the same medication.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
But I was listening once to Hallowell on a panel. I think it was at a CHED conference. And he talks about when he's talking to teens about what medication they want to start on. He'll ask them, well, which one do you like the sound of? How do you like the name of how it sounds? Adderall or Vyvanse or Concerta. It doesn't really matter what you start with. It's a matter of how you monitor it, how you titrate it, and then how you adjust it as needed.
Interesting. The one of the coolest things that I wish I could try is that the Ritalin patch, but unfortunately I'm actually allergic to Ritalin. I had a weird reaction to it as a kid. It was so weird. Like one night I started looking to the left, and I couldn't not look to the left, and I was like, hey mom, this is weird. Like I keep like looking to the left and I can't like move my head. And she's like, oh, you're so silly, go to bed. And I was like, okay. And then, so the next day I got up and I still had the same thing and obviously took my meds, and like, I started to like have muscle contractions all over my body.
So you're having like major tics?
Not major tics. It was just it was just like flexing. All my muscles were flexing in a weird way. And like the only thing that I could do to feel normal was like chew on my tongue, which is weird. And then by that time, my mom was like, whoa, something is definitely wrong. And so she took me to the emergency room. They gave me Benadryl and I just knocked me out. And the doctors there said that they actually saw another patient just that week, and that it was happened a couple times. I actually met a guy that had a similar experience, and that what they did kind of described it as just an allergic reaction. And so, at the time I was thinking, allergic reaction, I've been on this like for years. And so for the longest time, I just thought it was like a bad batch of Ritalin that got out. I don't know if that's
which
true
is possible.
But yeah, because it was just interesting that there were so many cases in this area that happened at the same time. But anyway, the point, like, I think that Ritalin patch is freaking cool because you just slap the patch on and it works until you take it off. You just have to remember to take it off. Like,
I think that would be my issues. I would forget to take it off.
Yeah. You're like, what's going on?
I haven't slept for a week.
I feel great. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I found out that I had sleep apnea, which is amazing because if it is tied to my weight, that means I've been kind of haven't had sleep for a good night's rest in like 10 years. And if it's not, that means probably my whole life, which explains, like, especially like during like noise and color crunch sessions, we usually like stay up for like a day or two or three to like pull stuff to get everything ready and stuff. And I don't have a problem doing that. Like I'm just a badass like that. But it turns out, my body just is used to not getting sleep. So I'm able to do that. You know what I mean? But so I got my CPAP machine, but because I'm one of the few adult ADHD that still has the gross motor stuff, and so I have a hard time sitting down in one spot for very long, and especially at night, like I move around a lot when I sleep. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it difficult to have the CPAP machine work. And so I'm kind of looking at maybe doing a smaller dose of stimulant before I go to bed, which
that's fairly common. I think that more and more people are prescribing it that way. And I've actually been considering that myself.
I think I'm going to do it. And I talked to my doctor about it, and she was like, oh yeah. Because at the time I was like, I want to maybe do a week of Adderall and maybe blah, blah, blah. And she was like, you know what? I'll just prescribe you a month of Adderall if if you have problems, you could immediately stop. And she was like, oh, just take the Dexedrine at night and see if that works. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I had the time release kind of Dexedrine. And so I was terrified that if I took it, it would just keep me up for the whole night. So I was like, nah, I'm probably not going to do that. So I just tossed it. But so I don't know. I'm definitely have to talk to my doctor a little bit more about that and figure that out. But I am looking forward to finally getting the medication right. Because I in my experience, and it seems like kind of in almost everybody's experience, that the medication is like the number one most successful thing you could do. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I agree with you on that. You know, for some people that can't tolerate medication, you know, there's a difference between not being able to tolerate medication and not being able to tolerate the idea of medication.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's, you know, totally. I take medication, I take Adderall, I take 60 milligrams XR, but I still have ADHD and I still have challenges. And that's why everything else is so important, because it's not just taking the medication and voila, you know, it's like everything's easy now. You know, it allows you to work on the stuff that's hard.
Yeah. Somebody once described it as it levels the playing field.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you still have to do the work. And I'm definitely in that place right now. Like I said, my euphoria has been tempered. And I'm like, I still got so much stuff to do. But honestly, like, life is tough for everybody. It's a long road for everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel fortunate that at least I know what's wrong. You know, at least I think about and come up with strategies. Like,
it's
a lot
game
of people.
Changer.
Yes, definitely a game changer. And I feel bad that some people, you know, struggle with their lives never knowing what's going on.
Right.
So
they just have to try harder, and they're just, you know, lazy, or they're not motivated. And it's not about that.
It's not about that at all.
So, you know, we're going to kind of wrap this up here. You know, you have ADHD when in the beginning of the call, I told you that we're going to do a 5-minute and now we're at 43 minutes. This isn't fun though. So if you can maybe just leave us with a little summary of kind of how you're doing right now and what is something that you're trying to really focus on for maybe the next 2 to 4 weeks. So if we were to maybe check in with you in 2 to 4 weeks, you can give us an update of how you're doing. Share with us something that you would be able to say, you know what, I have accomplished this. I would feel really good about how things are going.
Sure, definitely. One thing I really, before we do that, I want to mention that, because like in the letter, I like talk about that girl a lot. And the only reason I was a little bit hesitant to put that out there is she's kind of a real private person.
Okay.
I'm like totally in the public eye, and like, I don't really care. And so I'm not so worried about that. But I am worried that someone might criticize, you know, her and not knowing her. And I just want to speak for her character. She's, you know, a really good person. And I think, we get along, great. I think when you first, especially when you get first into a relationship, you tend to look at all the good things about a person. And so I never got to the point where I was noticing the bad stuff. And so I'm to the point now where I kind of realize kind of the red flags. And I think we could definitely be friends. So one of the things that I have to do though is I can't really spend a lot of time with her until I'm a little more less impulsive and stuff, because we have a history of kind of going back and forth in the relationship. And so one thing that I kind of set a rule for myself not to be in a relationship for at least like a year before I figure out all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because I really, really, really need to figure out. And so one of the things that I'm working on in the next couple of weeks is I kind of got the realization from one of your podcasts when you read a letter from a person that was describing that the amygdala hijack, you know, and so that I was like, what? Like, I had to listen to it a couple times to like wrap my brain around it. So right now I've been really diving into like the biology of ADHD. And so I'm really, in the next couple of weeks, I'm just going to continue reading a lot of the medical journals out there. My hero in ADHD, his name is Russell Barkley.
Yep. Mine too.
And I think I just think he gets it.
Yeah.
I think I don't recommend reading him if you have like a weak constitution, because that he's really critical of ADHD being a gift. And I think he's the one person, because of the UMass study and his Milwaukee study, he's like the person that can make that call because he's the one person that has all of the data. I'm reading one of his books right now. That's the adult ADHD, how it works, or the science.
Taking charge of adult ADHD?
No,
or the science.
The one that's actually about those two studies. And so I'm trying to get through that book. It's not ADHD friendly. It's super academic. So
yes, a lot of his books are.
Yeah. So, and no fault to him. He actually mentions, like, I tried to make this less academic so more people could read it. And it's like, yeah, okay. So I want to read that whole book in the next 2 weeks and really have a foundation of like how executive function works and how the biology works, and be able to carry that, use that as a tool in my everyday life. Cause like I'm super susceptible to that amygdala hijack. I kind of, the one coping mechanism is to like use other parts of your brain in that situation, like try to use your neocortex, or try to like do abstract math and stuff just to get to wrestle the control away from your amygdala. Unfortunately, like Russell Barkley, the way he puts it is like, the problem isn't knowing what to do, but doing what you know.
Exactly.
And so like practicing that is like, how do I do that? So what I've been doing is going to the worst place of the internet, YouTube comments, you know what I mean? Especially like ADHD stuff. And so I just immerse myself into that and just kind of wait for somebody to say something that triggers that my amygdala. And then in that situation, I practice, self-soothing. And
so what you're really doing is exposure and response prevention work. Which is to expose yourself to the situations that create that reaction and change how you respond to it. Good for you for doing it. That's not easy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think if I do make a mistake, like, it doesn't matter. None of those people, they're not real people. You know what I mean? I'm more concerned about like doing that with like one of my buddies, and I'm like, oh God, the next day I'm like, oh Jesus, why did I do that? So that's what I'm working on.
Mindfulness is also a really great approach for managing those overwhelming emotions.
See, that's what I'm worried about. Like, I don't know where that line is drawn between like mindfulness and executive function. Because I know even though I know how a lot of this stuff works and I'm learning more, I still run into that. Like, for instance, the other day I was checking out, buying some food at the cafeteria where I work. And the teller was like banging on the machine, and she was like, "Oh, you really have to beat this to get it to work." And in my brain, I was like, oh, that'd be a funny joke about an ex-husband. And I was like, wait a second, I have an ex-wife. And then as I'm saying, oh, sounds like my ex-wife, I'm realizing, what the am I saying? That's not, no. And she like looked at me, and I'm like, oh my God, no, that's no, it was a joke.
Like, that could be funny on Comedy Central. It's not funny in real life.
Not in real life. Oh man, she was kind of like middle-aged and looked like she's been through some shit. And I'm like,
oh no.
Oh God. And so I kind of like didn't know what to do. I just kind of ran away. I was like, oh no, that's sorry. I don't hit girls. So like for me, like knowing like that mindfulness, and then like and where that line is drawn between impulsive, I don't know where that is right now. And so hopefully I can figure that out before I offend too many people.
So we will check back in with you in a couple weeks to see if you finished getting through that book, and keep us updated. I know for myself, having that accountability, my biggest challenge is sleep, and I post a lot of my sleep stats on our Facebook page, just to kind of keep me accountable, and it's been really helpful. And it's the one area I'm constantly fighting, but I feel like I'm just barely getting ahead of it.
Right. And remind me, like you don't have a sleeping disorder. You did a sleep study, right?
I did a sleep study and they said that I sleep pretty well.
Oh man.
I know, right?
Oh man. Yeah,
maybe it was an off night.
Yeah. Your brain was like, I'll get him this time. Suckers. Yeah. Well, I definitely struggle with that, so I totally identify with that.
Well, James, do me a favor. Can you tell the listeners kind of where they can check stuff that you're doing, where they can kind of find you, and if people want to get a hold of you?
Sure.
Or do you want people to get a hold of you? I don't know.
I don't really care.
This is what I hear people, other podcasters, they always ask people that at the very end. So I figure, I should do that.
No, you're doing good. Yeah. So people can find me on Facebook. I don't take Facebook too seriously, so I'll accept anybody that asks me. And sometimes I get the porn sites or the porn things, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" I'm like, "Oh God, what did I do? Unfriend." You know what I mean? So you can find me on Facebook. If you want to check out the mag, it's noiseandcolormag.com. You can see we've been doing it for almost 2 years now, and we got a lot of the stuff on there. The most recent magazine is probably one of the most well-designed ones that we've done yet. I don't know if anybody would be interested because it's mostly local content, but it at least looks pretty. You guys can check out. So like you said, I'm launching the podcast network, and I have a website. It's not, of course, complete, but you can check it out and watch it progress. It's brushfiremedia.net, and I guess look forward to. I'll be launching it in August. And
we will get all the links to that in the show notes.
Cool.
Because that's what podcasters are supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
This is just a big experiment, right? It's fun.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for being generous with your time and for allowing me to share this with our listeners. I think it was very real. It's very authentic. And that's really the goal of this show. You were making a comment about there aren't a lot of podcasters who are just kind of sharing the journey. My goal is to provide a blend of the clinical information, but also sharing the journey. So, that's where what my aim is. And I think I will definitely be looking forward to hearing what you do as well.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable, and I think it's missing. I think there's not often a lot of humanity that comes with the clinical kind of advice stuff, and I think you blend those two things like perfectly. And I really appreciate what you do. For sure.
Thanks. All right, well, thanks a lot, and we will be in touch.
Yay!
All right, James, take care.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye. Well, podcast listeners, you have just listened to another episode of ADHD Rewired. As always, I want to hear from you. I do appreciate it. As you can tell, I dedicated 2 episodes to one of our listeners. James Hickman, I'm so proud of what you're doing. You're doing great. We'll be rooting for you, and we'll check in with you in a few weeks. So here's what I'm doing regarding the coaching group. Look on our Facebook group for an invite for a Google Hangout. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, what do you want specifically from a coaching group? I've been tossing around some ideas in my mind, as maybe I'm having some issues with perfectionism. Maybe I'm just really excited that I now have high-speed internet. Whatever it is, it's still on my radar. I know it's taking longer than I said. I'm not going to make any excuses. I'm working on it. I'm moving forward. And, I would really encourage you to come into our Facebook community group, because I've actually been giving away a lot of free coaching in the group. I log on there, someone's posting what they're planning on accomplishing today, and I'll post what I'm trying to get accomplished, and we'll check in with each other. This is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing with our coaching group, but on a more consistent basis. I am accepting individual coaching clients, and I'm always accepting reviews on iTunes, because this is how other people find this show. I know that today's episode is a little bit longer than my last few, But it is what it is, what it is. I'm going on and I'm rambling. So I think I should probably bring this show to a close. Leave me your reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. I greatly appreciate it. Find us on Facebook. Join my email list by either going to my website or texting Tivers to the number 22828. I appreciate you, and I want to leave you with this. In the words of John Lee Dumas, focus means follow one course until success. I was thinking about talking to James's mom for some sleep advice, but I'm afraid she would just say,
"Oh, you're so silly. Go to bed."
Until next time.